I'm really pleased to be here tonight. I was awakened at 3 a.m. due to a sewage problem, a broken pipe at my mom's place in Boulder, and I spent all day there, so this is much better than that. And because of that, whatever I say tonight, I'm not responsible for it, because I'm just brain dead. You know, we lawyers like this wonkishness when we're involved in studying and spouting off about legal issues. You know, strict scrutiny tests, compelling government interest, narrowly tailored for least restrictive means. Wow, that's fun to parse through. Neutral and general applicable laws. Well, that's exciting from a mental gymnastics standpoint. Sincerely held religious beliefs of a fervent adherent? Yes. RFRA? Oh boy, that is fun. But sometimes we can get lost in the forest for the trees when we're using these analytical tools. So what is this all about? One of my mentors in law school at CU Law School told me, good lawyers clarify and simplify. I'm not that good of a lawyer. These guys are much better lawyers than I am. Brent is a much better lawyer than I will ever be. But frankly, I want to try and clarify and simplify this for us tonight. Get down to brass tacks and what this is all about. Folks, this is about woulda, coulda, shoulda. Jack Phillips and baking a same-sex wedding cake. He would, but he won't. He could, but he can't. He shall, but he shouldn't. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, in part. Should he bake that cake and deny his freedom of conscience? That's what it comes down to. This case and what we're talking tonight about is all about freedom of conscience, or what we in the evangelical circles will call soul freedom. Period, the end. Freedom of conscience is the right to think and believe as one sees fit. Freedom of conscience is what the First Amendment is all about. We're free to think and believe as we are led to do so by our God, or as we want. No government, local, state, or federal, can tell me what to think or believe on freedom of conscience or soul freedom. Religious liberty is a civil rights issue, by the way. Its moral basis is the recognition of freedom of conscience, which is fundamental to human dignity. A black pastor, Corey Mitchell, in Creedmoor, North Carolina, said that, and I can't believe it. No, I believe it fully, that it is a civil rights issue. You know, folks, it's high time that we all understand my freedom doesn't extend so far that it would deny you yours freedom. My freedom does not extend so far that it would deny you yours. Sometimes in this world, you have to restrain your own freedom in order to recognize the liberty of someone else. The Free Exercise Clause was designed to keep government from unnecessarily interfering with religious practices. I'm an international lawyer and internationalist. I want to tell you about a case in Canada that is very troubling. And it's related to what we're facing down here. And it may prescient what's going to happen. So a couple of months ago, Trinity Western versus Legal Society, a decision was made by the Canadian Supreme Court, a 7-2 decision that said the civil rights of the LGBT community overcomes the sincerely held religious beliefs of Trinity Western University, a Christian university, saying it's proportionate and reasonable, whatever that means, proportionate and reasonable to limit religious rights in order to ensure open access for LGBTQ students. And thus, TWU can't have a law school with a Christian worldview. They do have a lifestyle covenant that the Law Society accreditors didn't like. Doesn't even mention LGBTQ in any way, but the court found the public interest of the law profession and the accreditors gives them the right to promote equality by ensuring equal access, supporting diversity within the bar, and preventing harm to LGBTQ students. It's important to note that 8 of those 9 judges of the Canadian Supreme Court said that Trinity Western's religious freedom was indeed violated. But the majority held it didn't stand up against the principles of legal equality and non-discrimination, hinging basically on the progressive gender definition of marriage between same-sex people. In other words, accommodating religious diversity is in the public interest, but just not enough to get past the accreditors. Here's what's most interesting to note from my standpoint is the Canadian Educational Accrediting Commission said to Trinity Western, look, Trinity Western, if you change or do away with that part of your lifestyle covenant that deals with heterosexual marriage between a man and a woman, they will let you have the law school. That was a settlement offer. And what did TWU say? No way. That's part of our core tenets of belief. We're not going to change that. So they suffer the consequences. This case is about government-prescribed beliefs about gender and marriage and accreditors trying to force Trinity Western University as a Christian institution to believe something that's in contravention of their theological core. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. Now, we're worried about that here in the United States. It's easy for us to say, well, it's Canada, that won't happen here. Nah. We're very alarmed over our faith-based mission and potentially our lifestyle covenant of the overreach of accreditors when it comes to our mission. Dr. Sweeting testified about that last week, saying we need to better define what it means to respect religious mission by the Department of Ed and our accreditors. Let's flash forward to the Masterpiece Cake Shop case and how that ties in. You know, one of the things that's misunderstood by the courts of many people is for Christian evangelicals, our faith expressions are not limited to worship on Sundays. They're part and parcel of a non-compartmentalized life every day of the week, even or especially at work. As Jack said in an article, editorial in the Denver Post, quote, my life, my entire life belongs to Jesus, and I believe that everything I do should honor him. As the Bible says, whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus. Jack owns a business. He's not just an employee of Masterpiece Cake Shop. He owns it. He's a practicing Christian whose faith is on display every day and every minute of his work. That begs the question, isn't the government wrong to punish Jack for living out his faith? Now here's where my wife has said, don't overreact, Kyle. But I do what I do best, so I'm going to overreact because somebody needs to. As Eric Hall was talking about, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission has some extraordinary equitable powers, scary equitable powers. And you know, this was noted in the Masterpiece Cakes decision by Kennedy twice. He talked about it twice in there. He said, here's what the statute says, here's what they did. They ordered Jack to cease and desist from discriminating against same-sex couples by refusing to sell them wedding cakes. It also ordered additional remedial measures, including comprehensive staff training, changes to any and all company policies to comply with this order, prepare quarterly compliance reports for a period of 2 years, documenting the number of patrons denied service, along with a statement describing the remedial actions taken. Are you kidding me? This is the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was literally taken out back to the woodshed by the United States Supreme Court and said, this kind of animus can't exist. This is unconstitutional animus. And so now they want to turn around and say, yeah, let us train you, Jack. Let's spend time figuring out how to get your mind right, how to change your theology, how to be reformed. Soul conscience, soul freedom, freedom of conscience. You know, this could go from remediation to reform to re-engineering to rejection and recanting if you don't watch out. Just get your mind right, Jack. We're just trying to remake somebody and how they think and believe. If that's what it is, we're all close to trouble, perilously. You know, my wife and I have had the privilege of living in many places in the world, friends all over the world. And so when they find out about this case, and they know I'm a lawyer, they go, wait a minute, we don't understand this at all. The United States, the bastion of freedom, and what does this come to? Your government is trying to reshape the mind and belief system of somebody, alter that, who you are, into some image that the government has. You know, my wife and I have lived in communist countries. We've experienced totalitarianism in various places in the world. We know people that have gone through the Cultural Revolution in China. They're friends. They've been through re-education camps. They've had to engage in self-criticism programs in order to change their minds and their behaviors about how they think. We need to be really careful of this. This is a challenge to all of us. And we need to stand up. Some of us need to go screaming in the night, stop, stop, stop. Doesn't matter if you're in favor of the LGBTQ community in this case or against it, because this kind of coercive, psychological coercive power of the Colorado Civil Rights Commission is frightening. We're on a precipice here. We need to be careful. If we go down that slope, we may never get back up. Now, I could spend a lot of time talking about dignity, stigma, equal access accommodations, the 14th Amendment, but I want to get just right to the tail end so we can take some questions. You know, the great playwright Eugene O'Neill said, "Man is born broken. He lives by mending. The grace of God is the glue." The grace of God is the glue. Folks, we need to pray for more glue. We need to pray for more grace. We as Christians need to be out front demonstrating grace, because God has been and is gracious in ways that we can't even count, not to mention our salvation. You know, for a while I thought, and I was joined by a good friend of mine here on the faculty from Wyoming. I was born in Wyoming. We Wyomingites have to stick together. He's a professor and a pastor, and we both just said, why doesn't Jack just bake the cake? Just bake the cake, Jack. Wouldn't that be gracious? Well, you know, the more I see this, the more I realize, don't bake that cake, Jack. You're subjected to the bullying, mental torture, the loss of income, the humiliation, the stigma put on you by a government for your sincerely held religious beliefs and trying to get you to change those. You know, Martin Luther at the Inquisition, the Diet of Worms in 1521 said to the controlling power of the day, "This is where I stand. I can do no more. So help me God." Pastor Martin Niemöller said, "First they came for the disabled. Since I was not disabled, I said nothing. Then they came for the homosexuals, and I was not homosexual, so I said nothing. Then they came for the Jews and the blacks, and I was not a Jew or a black, so I said nothing. Then they came for the gypsies and the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I said nothing. And here's where I add, then they came for the evangelical Christians, and I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to say anything." Now, I'm going to bet you're never going to hear this in the context of a constitutional law debate on religious freedom, but Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers wrote a song, "I Won't Back Down." Johnny Cash sang it too. "I won't back down." It says, "I'll stand my ground, won't be turned around. I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know what's right. I got just one life in a world that keeps on pushing me around, but I stand my ground, and I won't back down." Don't back down, Jack. Don't recant, Jack. Don't bake that cake, Jack, no matter how rough the Colorado Civil Rights Commission makes it on you. Don't bake that cake, Jack, until somebody, the U.S. Supreme Court or the Colorado Supreme Court or the Colorado Civil Rights Commission or some legislature recognizes your religious liberty, civil rights as fundamental to your dignity and our dignity as well. Once they do that, then bake the darn cake, Jack.